Hello, my name's Vince Sheehan, and today I'd like to talk about Franck's Symphony in D minor. I'd like to go through this amazing symphony, exploring how the structure of this great work is put together, how these themes are presented, and how they are developed throughout the course of the work. I am one of those people who just loves following the structure of classical music as I listen to it, and it helps me concentrate on the music. And if you're a bit like me, this video, indeed this channel, might be of some use to you. Now, Franck composed this symphony between 1886 and 1888, right near the end of his life. He died in 1890. And it's an interesting symphony because, for a start, it's in three movements, when you'd expect a symphony to be in four movements. And it's very much in the vein of Wagner and Liszt in terms of its harmonic language and its chromatic modulations. So it kind of marries the symphonic world of, say, Haydn, Mozart and Beethoven with the recent developments of Wagner. And indeed, like Wagner, we have themes which are brought back throughout the course of the whole work. So themes we hear in the first movement and the second movement are brought back in the finale, which gives it this sense of unity. Now, when this piece was first performed in 1889 at the Paris Conservatory, it seemed to provoke negative reactions from many people. The French musical life at the time seemed to have become quite ossified after Berlioz. The French operatic tradition was strong, but in terms of orchestral music, the people in the French Conservatory and the academies were very conservative, and people didn't really get what Franck was doing in employing the new wave of Wagnerian and Lisztian composition into a symphony. One professor said this about the premiere: Franck's music may be whatever you please, but it will certainly never be a symphony. Even other composers like Charles Gounod criticised the work. It seemed people weren't ready for this symphony when it was first performed. But thankfully, over the course of the 20th century, it became a staple of the orchestral repertoire. Although it's still a piece that kind of dips in and out of popularity. But I think it's just an amazing symphony. It's just wonderful, and it's a great joy to listen to it again and to analyse it. Now, despite the modern, by Franck's day standards, musical language of this symphony, the form of the first movement is actually a fairly regular sonata form. And we begin straight in with the first subject, which is presented in a kind of slow version and a quick version, a couple of times each. So we begin with this in the violas, cellos and bass. And this is, I suppose, the kind of motto theme of the whole work. That's the main first subject of the first movement. First violins have this descending idea as well. And we go into D flat major with this lovely moment here. then the violas and cellos kind of ratchet up the tension with this tremolo. That kind of thing. This whole lento passage, right, it's got the feeling of an introduction actually, but it is actually part of the first subject group. And then we reach the allegro non troppo, where we hear that tune in a forceful statement. We hear this brief snatch of a tune here, which is kind of a foretaste for the second subject. Now, once we hear the lento and the allegro statements, we then move into F minor, from D minor to F minor. And everything is repeated in this new key. Etc. We then have a transition where we hear this beautiful melody. And then in this kind of radiant sunlight we come into the second subject, which is such a stirring melody in fortissimo. Glorious, isn't it? And we have this lovely shadowy foresty music where the violins go. The music then ebbs away into the development section, which begins with these statements on the horn initially, and then the oboe of the second subject, which seem to hang in the air before we come back to the first subject in A flat minor. As you'd expect, we move through a succession of keys. The whole work feels like an enormous transition in a way. The piece doesn't stay in a particular key for a sustained length of time, which I think gives it its appeal, to be honest. Now, there's this lovely interplay between the violins and woodwinds. At the apex of the development, we have a combination of the first and second subjects almost simultaneously. Now we've reached a recapitulation. Back to D minor. After a slightly varied restatement of the first subject, we have the transition, that lovely melody again. Before we come to the glorious second subject in iridescent D major. We then have a coda which begins in B flat major. This idea. And come to the final bars of this opening movement, where we reach a kind of tierce de picardie, blazing on a D major chord. The central movement of this three-movement symphony is gorgeous. It's such a beautiful piece of music, with the harps and the wistful tune by the cor anglais. It has a kind of tales of old feel to it, rather like a medieval ballad or something like that. The form is fairly straightforward. It's a rondo really. But what's interesting about this movement is Franck seems to conflate a slow and scherzo movement, bring those ideas together into one piece of music. So here's the unforgettable opening, the recurring A section. It's absolutely beautiful, isn't it? Curiously, the use of a cor anglais was one of the reasons why some of the critics took a dislike to this symphony back in 1889 in its premiere in Paris. Something along the lines that a cor anglais shouldn't be used in a symphony. It's not proper, which of course is completely ridiculous. Haydn, for a start, had used cor anglais before, so I don't know what they were talking about, but as is often the case of these things, perhaps the reasons are really more political rather than musical. Anyway, so that's the linchpin of this movement, that beautiful melody, which actually is our third recurring theme in this work, which we'll hear again in the last movement. We then have a contrasting B section, moving from B flat minor to B flat major. There's perhaps something in the contours of that melody which reminds us of the second subject in the first movement. You remember that? We then have a transition which incorporates a return to the original cor anglais melody before we hear a faster version of the A tune. This is perhaps the scherzo part of this movement with this scurrying violin accompaniment. Franck then introduces a new melody for the C section, and by the way you can follow the form of each of the movements down below in the description. We hear it first on the clarinets. E flat major, the last A section, A2, seems to combine the slower version of the cor anglais melody with the faster scherzo version, before we have a coda which brings back the other melodies from the B and C section as well. The finale is absolutely extraordinary. It's a movement which manages to tie up all those threads which have been presented to us in the first two movements, providing us with a supremely satisfying conclusion to this great work. It's in sonata form, and after a few ferocious bars fortissimo, we come to the first subject, this delightful carefree melody in D major, which we first hear in the cellos. Etc. A gorgeous melody, really carefree. Again, it's this kind of a thematic resemblance to the second kind of cyclical idea in this work, the second subject from the first movement. There's, I think, a similarity there. We then come to a transition theme on the brass, like a chorale. Before eventually we come to the second subject in B minor, where we hear the that wonderful tune from the second subject again played on the cor anglais, and here it is again played on the same instrument. And that's a real moment in this symphony. You think, wow, isn't that clever? And unexpected as well. We come to the development, which is really exciting, and it's wonderful to hear that initial idea in a canon between the woodwinds and strings. We also hear a fortissimo statement of that brass chorale idea, the transition theme. before we have this really exciting build-up to the recapitulation, where the whole orchestra this time plays the first subject. It's a thrilling moment in this symphony, isn't it? It's like a bottle's been shaken and the corks come off, and just this outpouring of joy. It's just incredible. There's no transition this time. It's been used a lot in the development, and Franck goes straight into the second subject, that cor anglais tune from the second movement. This time heard in the whole orchestra, such a moving, stirring moment. We then come to this incredibly affecting coda, where Franck brings back the two other cyclical ideas from the first movement, and this theme. And we also hear the original first subject right at the end as well. From the first movement, it seems as if this work has in some sense come back full circle, but of course, like all great works of art which do similar things, we're all much better and wiser for it. And of course we're also treated to more statements of the first subject of the finale. So that's Franck's Symphony in D minor, a wonderful masterpiece. If you've enjoyed this video, please click like and subscribe. Also, please consider donating to my channel. The PayPal link's down below. And if there's a piece you'd like me to look at in the future, please put it in the comments below. I'm a very busy man, but I'll do my best to get through everyone's requests eventually. Anyway, all the best. See you soon. Bye.